If reports coming out of Washington, D.C. tonight are indeed correct, then there has been a decisive turning of the tide in the battle over the recently released border security Ukraine funding compromise bill. Mitch McConnell, the Republican leader in the Senate, according to reports, is urging his fellow GOP senators to vote against the very bill that he championed not more than 24 hours ago. What does all this mean? Hang on, folks. We're going to get into all this in just 1 second. My name is Brian Trippett. I am your front porch conservative. Step on up to my electronic front porch and let's talk. There's an old saying in my part of the country, if you don't like the weather, just wait 24 hours because it's going to change. And the same thing may very well be true of Washington, D.C. when it comes to the opinion of people on a bill that they are championing. Well, if you're wondering what I'm talking about, it turns out that the wily old Kentuckian Mitch McConnell, the Senate Minority Leader for the Republicans, has changed his tune on the border security Ukraine funding bill that James Lankford, Republican of Oklahoma, helped negotiate, and the details came out about less than 24 hours ago. We go to BreitbartNews.com, take a look at this headline. Mitch McConnell turns against border bill. In an article written by Bradley J., we read the following. Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell, Republican Kentucky, made the shocking decision to recommend Republicans block the advancement of the Senate pro-migration border bill. That first procedural vote was set for Wednesday. It is unknown if Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, Democrat of New York, will forge ahead, although that is likely. McConnell cited the overwhelming number of Senate Republicans planning to vote against the measure, either on substance or because they wanted more time, according to Punchbowl News. The longtime Republican leader has spoken in favor of the deal and did not express any personal hesitations about the legislation to his colleagues. According to Punchbowl, McConnell said that the political mood in the country has changed since negotiations began months ago. Well, I slightly disagree with that assessment. I don't think the mood has changed. I think his ability to understand the mood has changed. At the time, McConnell and Democrat leaders agreed to pair foreign aid to Ukraine, of which McConnell is the Senate's greatest champion, with a border compromise. Democrats, although also generally in favor of aiding Ukraine's stalemated war against Russia, used McConnell's fervor for Ukraine aid against Republicans, dangling a proposed border compromise in exchange for aiding the European nation. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, Democrat of New York, touted his close work with McConnell on the deal. Quote, I have never worked more closely with Leader McConnell on any piece of legislation as we did on this, Schumer told reporters on Sunday. Leaked details of the secretive deal, which McConnell's chosen Republican lead negotiator, Senator James Lankford, Republican of Oklahoma, and others allies denied, were confirmed Sunday upon the bill's release. The overwhelming opposition led to McConnell altering his plans Monday night. Even Lankford, who continued championing the deal leading up to Monday night's Senate Republican conference meeting, would not say after the meeting if he would vote to move forward Wednesday on the deal he negotiated, according to the Huffington Post. The plan would set into law many of the open border pro-migration policies Biden has instituted that have led to a wave of migration that has overwhelmed law enforcement at the southern border. This is a developing story. Okay, let's get into this. As I said as I was reading through that article, and I was being a bit tongue-in-cheek when I did it, I don't think the mood of the country has changed so much as it is Mitch McConnell's ability to understand where the mood of the country is. Nobody wants what is being proposed in this bill, or at least, let me rephrase that, a significant portion of people don't want it, and for good reason. It's not a border security bill, which I'll explain in just a few moments. So McConnell came out in favor of the deal that Lankford negotiated, along with Schumer on Sunday night, which, by the way, given Schumer championing how much he and McConnell worked together on this thing, you kind of got to wonder how old Chucky Boy now feels since Mitch threw him under the bus, along with a few other people. But we'll get to that too. Anyway, McConnell has now reversed positions, but that sort of begs the question, why? Well, laying aside his ability to wake up and realize, oh crap, a lot of people don't like this, there is something very important to consider. Look, Republicans are going into an election year in which the Senate could swing back to their control if they play their cards right. Now, say what you want to about McConnell. There are moments he definitely leaves a lot to be desired. Believe me, it's a lot to be desired. But he has an uncanny ability to know when to read the room, how to read the room, and know what he ought to do based on his situations, particularly in a legislative sense. I wouldn't argue that McConnell is a champion as far as being able to get people elected to the Senate. Yeah, the past two elections have shown his abilities are not what they once were, but he is very good in a legislative chamber as far as getting things done and knowing what he can and can't do. Well, McConnell has now realized we're not going to get this thing done as it currently is constituted right now. Now, notice I use the words right now. This thing is far from being over, folks. Just because McConnell supposedly told his GOP colleagues in a private meeting they ought to vote against this thing doesn't mean he and Schumer aren't still going to try and get something done. But as it stands right now, if reports are true, then this thing may be dead in the water in its current iteration. So that sort of begs the question, why? Well, as I started to say a moment ago, the Republicans have a lot of seats up for grabs this November in the Senate, but not as many as the Democrats. If ever there was an election cycle where the Republicans could pick up a significant number of Senate seats, it's this year. And given that Donald Trump is probably going to be at the top of the ticket in states like Ohio, Montana, Nevada, Arizona, and others, the issue of illegal immigration is going to be big on the minds of the voters. And does McConnell really want to put his Senate Republicans in a position where they walk the plank, piss off a significant portion of the Republican base and any independent voters who might be willing to give their candidates a sniff? I doubt it. So, we said last night that I'd do a follow-up video about what all was in this bill. And believe me, there is a lot to be desired. There's good reasons why this thing ought not be voted for. We'll get to that in a moment. But the report out of Breitbart said that all this came out of Punchbowl News. I'll take you to the Twitter page of one Andrew Desireo. And this is where the story about McConnell gets started. McConnell recommended to GOP senators behind closed doors that they block the border bill on Wednesday, per multiple sources, because it's clear that most Republicans are preparing to vote no, either because they oppose the bill or they want more time. And Andrew Desireo is a senior congressional reporter with Punchbowl News. So, what is it about this bill that is so wretchedly awful that a significant number of Republican senators were going to vote no on it anyway? With that, we turn to one of the heroes so far in this struggle, Mike Lee, Republican senator from the state of Utah. Now, like most politicians in Washington, Lee will do things that sometimes send me up the wall and make me absolutely crazy. But on this one, he's being an absolute hero fighting against this thing. He has put together a list of 12 different problems that are in this border security Ukraine compromise funding bill. Take a look at some of this. Here's his list. Check this out. The border deal will not secure our border. This is from Mike Lee's own website. Passing it into law would worsen the border crisis. Here's why. Number one, it codifies catch and release. It gives the Secretary of Homeland Security unchecked authority to release an alien into the United States under ineffective, quote, alternatives to detention. And at the end of each section, Lee cites what part of the bill he finds this in. Number two, allows up to 1.8 million illegal aliens to enter before temporarily closing parts of the border, from Section 244B. Loopholes, limited durations, presidential discretion, allows the president to reopen the border at any time if it's in, quote, the national interest to temporarily suspend the border emergency authority for up to 45 days. Funds sanctuary cities and NGOs sending illegal immigrants across the country. Subsidizes free taxpayer-funded legal counsel to illegal aliens. expands parole instead of limiting it, increases green cards by 50,000 per year for 5 years. Work permits for adult children of H-1B visa holders. Immediate work permits to every illegal released from custody after they pass an initial screening. Doesn't deport anybody. Afghan Adjacent Act, which would create a pathway to citizenship for over 60,000 poorly vetted Afghans who were brought to the country due to Biden's disastrous withdrawal from Afghanistan. Section 331 of the bill. Weakens asylum screenings and codifying Biden policy, and no immediate funding for the border wall. Now, I could just hear it out there right now. Some of you folks on the left saying, well, of course he's going to find problems with it. It's Mike Lee, and he's a Republican, and he doesn't like anything that a Democrat does. Hold on a second, folks. Lee is not the only one to come up with problems with this thing, and that takes us to Newsweek magazine. There is an article that's written that demonstrates one of the bigger reasons why this thing ought to be opposed. Take a look at this. Headline: Texas stripped of powers in border security bill. In an article written by Sean O'Driscoll, we read the following. Conservatives have attacked a provision of the new border security bill that would only allow legal challenges to be made in Washington, D.C. The bill would strip the power of Texas and other states to challenge some of its provisions in their local federal court. Conservative commentators were quick to denounce the provision contained on page 221 of the bill. William Shipley, who was a federal prosecutor for over 20 years, decried its court provisions on Twitter, X, formerly Twitter, on Sunday. Quote, this would prevent plaintiffs like the state of Texas from filing suit in Texas federal courts. This is corrupt, he wrote. The United States District Court for the District of Columbia shall have sole and original jurisdiction to hear challenges, whether constitutional or otherwise, to the validity of this section or any written policy directive, written policy guideline, written procedure, or the implementation thereof. End of quote. The right of judicial review for illegal immigrants about to be deported has proved controversial. So basically, if this thing had become law, states like Texas or Louisiana or Arizona, California, or any state for that matter that want to challenge some or parts of this law wouldn't be able to do so unless they go to the federal judiciary in the District of Columbia. Now, how fair a trial do you think they're going to get there? So yeah, there's a lot of reasons why this bill ought to be opposed. So, let's talk further a little bit about the politics where this thing is concerned. I said McConnell threw Chuck Schumer under the bus. Well, he's not the only one with tire tracks on his back. James Lankford of Oklahoma really got hung out to dry. If you don't believe me, check out this tweet from Sean Davis, who's the co-founder of the Federalist. Listen to this. Let this be a lesson to any Republican stupid enough to go out on a limb and do McConnell's dirty work. He will leave you out to dry, then cut off the limb you're standing on to save his own behind. Make no mistake, McConnell picked Lankford for this kamikaze mission because, number one, Lankford isn't up for re-election until 2028, and number two, Lankford didn't have the experience or the wits to accomplish anything substantive against Schumer and Biden, whose goals on immigration and Ukraine perfectly align with McConnell's. It was vintage Mitch McConnell, worked feverishly behind the scenes on behalf of his donors and the Uniparty to fleece the taxpayers, pick an unsuspecting dupe to bear the public burden of carrying McConnell's slop bucket, then throw the poor dupe right under the bus when everything goes sideways. And I tell you what, that's got to be one of the most accurate descriptors of what's happened here. If the reports by Punchbowl News are correct, and McConnell is telling his fellow GOP senators, hey man, you really shouldn't be voting for this thing. I wouldn't do it. There's Lankford sitting over there in the corner going, but you got me to negotiate this thing. Because I don't know what you're talking about. I didn't want for this thing anyway, and I don't think anyone else should either. You can just hear the turtle right now. And on it goes. Unbelievable. And you have to admit, even in D.C., for experienced politicians, the whipsawing of your neck as you turn around from everything that's happening so fast, even by experienced political standards, has got to be something crazy. If you don't believe me, one last tweet from Mike Lee. A week ago, we were told the border deal was almost certain to pass, even though we wouldn't see the bill until 24 hours ago. As of tonight, it appears to be going the way of the 8-track tape. Hey, don't be busting on 8 tracks. I still got a few of them. But anyway, this place is strange. We were worried, then the people spoke. But Lee does offer one word of caution. To be clear, this isn't over yet. The firm, which is his nickname for Schumer and McConnell, has always found a way of resurrecting bad ideas, but we are winning. And yes, ladies and gentlemen, we the people are indeed winning. I don't know that I can ever remember an issue that has brought together the Republican base with such ferociousness. They have absolutely been burning down phone lines in Washington, D.C., calling up senators and congressmen saying, don't you dare vote for this thing. To the point, I tried to make a phone call to my local Republican senator, and I couldn't even get through till the end of the day. How crazy it was. So where does this leave it? Well, I think Lee is right. This is not over with yet. Schumer, and especially McConnell, have a very good way of bringing back things that everybody thought was dead to life. And McConnell has one further talent. He is notorious for snatching defeat from the jaws of victory. Translation, where this thing ought to go in the trash heap, McConnell's going to find a way to get that thing through the Senate. And if he does, he's going to hang his fellow GOPers out to dry come this November, at a time when they are right on the edge of regaining control of the upper chamber of Congress. So this is going to be interesting to keep an eye on, and believe me, keep an eye on it, we will. But that's what I've got to say about all this. What do you think? As we start to wrap up this video, please do me some favors as always. Number 1, if you're not a subscriber to my channel, please do so. Number 2, please leave a comment below. I would love to know what you think about all this. Number 3, please share the video around. I'll take all the help I can get in spreading the word about this going little concern of a channel. Number 4, hit the bell for notifications. I want to make sure you're always aware when new material is coming out, be it a video or a live stream. And finally, give me a thumbs up. My name is Brian Trippett. I am your front porch conservative, and I'll see you next time.